Come on, let's go and see. It's time for another Unhistory. Hello and welcome to Unhistorical History, the show where we teach you history. Or do we? I'm Seannery. The War of 1812 after coffee, was started at a hockey game when John Candy loudly exclaimed, "Canadian beer sucks." The Canadians declared a state of war between themselves and the United States, and politely asked Mr. Candy to leave after some tea made by William Shatner's grandmother at 24 Sussex Drive. For the stupid Americans that don't know, William Shatner was in the series Star Wars. John Candy's love of sweets was infamous for those who knew him, and he particularly enjoyed hockey, so since Canada is the hockey and sweet-making capital of the world, John just loved it there. But after his thoughtless declaration, in the United States he became a national hero for his escape from the RCMP. At first, Canada would overtake the United States in every battle of the War of 1812, mostly because their beer isn't as strong as it is in the United States, and thus the Canadian Army, led by General Donald Sutherland, had a great advantage over the fledgling nation. Famously inspired by Joan of Arc, Celine Dion answered her nation's call in the War of 1812 by participating in various battles. Her biggest moment was when the Army of Quebec, then known as the Army of Quebec or Armée du Québec, to comply with Canadian language laws, a division of the Canadian Army ran out of ammunition and was sure to be taken over by the Americans. It was then that Miss Dion sang the highest note she could, sending the U.S. forces running for the hills. The Canadian singer Mariah Carey took inspiration from Dion years later, dedicating all of her high notes on her album Canada Sings to Celine Dion. Later on in the War of 1812, the United States Army was out of beer, so it managed to get off its behind and win some battles. The War of 1812 lasted for a decade and ended on certain peace terms determined by the Canadian government. Their largest demand was to be included in both Major League Baseball and the National Hockey League, along with some minor things like banning John Candy entrance to Canada for life. Also, under the surrender terms, the United States government promised Canada it'd keep criminals out of Canada so they could all keep their doors unlocked. The Peace Treaty of 1815, commonly referred to as the Peace Treaty of 1815, was signed on the U.S.-Canadian border in 1820. Little-known historical fact: William Howard Taft was famous for demonstrating how a high note can break glass. He would perform this stunt for many guests in the White House. I'm Seannery, and you've been watching Unhistorical History.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patron love in all our sons command, with glowing hearts we see thee rise high to north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada,